There was a gathering at David Ferry's apartment in which Clay Shaw was a guest, and there was also someone named Leon Oswald there. And many people tried to dispute Ferry Russo, because what Ferry Russo went on to say is that after most of the guests had gone, Ferry and Shaw were discussing the death of President Kennedy, and they were discussing what their alibis would be. Ferry said he would be at Southeastern University, where he was, and Shaw said that he was going to be in San Francisco, where he was. And people tried to destroy Ferry Russo as a witness, and Bobby Kennedy's man, Walter Sheridan, did his darndest also to try to undermine Ferry Russo. And one of the ways that they've tried to undermine Russo is to say, well, how could Oswald have been, how could it have been seen? Nobody else saw Oswald ever in Ferry's apartment. And yet here's John Wilson telling me, now it wasn't on that night, but he did see Oswald up there in Ferry's apartment. Extraordinary. And people have poo-pooed this, but there it is. David Ferry, during the weekend of the assassination, drove to Houston and Galveston. Among his stops was an ice skating rink, and he later said that he was hoping to open an ice skating rink in New Orleans, which is ludicrous. He also said he had gone duck hunting, and there were guns in the car, one of those guns. Then he lied about the guns. Then he had to admit, yes, there were guns in the car. Very strange expedition. He made a lot of telephone calls. We don't really know what Ferry's role was. People have speculated, and I tried very hard in my book not to speculate, not to make conclusions based on what I didn't really know, that somehow Ferry had a role in spiriting Oswald out of Dallas. And then, of course, Oswald is captured. Maybe Ferry thought that was his role. And, of course, those who really planned the assassination had other ideas. They were not going to let Oswald live. Jim Garrison said that if Oswald hadn't been shot, he'd still be talking. So, maybe not to this moment, but that he would just have talked and talked. Up until the very end, Oswald believed that he would be protected, the way Clay Shaw always believed, that the CIA would save him, that Jack Garrison would never win at that trial. And I think Oswald felt the same thing. I think that explains why when Oswald is asked, after he was arrested by the Dallas police, does he want an attorney? And he said, get me John Abt. ABT. Well, John Abt was a Communist Party attorney, and Oswald is telling his handlers, yes, I'm still with the program. I understand that my cover is to say that I'm pro-Castro and that I'm a communist, and so what would a communist do but ask for a communist lawyer? So he was signaling that he wasn't going to tell anybody anything, and he was doing his part. He had no idea what his role really was, that he was set up. Although at some point he did say, I'm a patsy, I didn't do that. Well, nobody ever accused me of killing the president. He had no idea that this was going to happen to him. Richard Case Nagell had fired a shot in a bank. I can't remember the city, El Paso, I believe. And he wanted to be arrested. He wanted to be arrested because he had been in New Orleans for the CIA, spying on Oswald and all the anti-Castro Cubans, and he had penetrated the plot. He knew that there was going to be an assassination of President Kennedy, and he didn't want to be accused of having anything to do with it. So his way of avoiding that was to get himself in jail. And so he goes into because what would a person do? Go into a bank and shoot a gun off, and then there he is, incarcerated, so nobody could say he had anything to do with the assassination. Now, Jim Garrison had hoped to use Nagell because Nagell was a CIA operative, and Garrison had hoped to use Nagell at the trial of Clay Shaw, and Nagell said, you could do that, but I'm never going to say the CIA. And so Garrison just thought it was too outlandish, and he was really afraid of how all of this would, it seems so far out. It seemed, well, it is very, even to this day, there are people don't want to live in a society where the CIA killed the president. So they can't even accept it now. This is 45 years after the fact. So Garrison was trying very hard to make everything seem reasonable. Perhaps he bent over backwards. And one of the things that Garrison decided, which I think he realized later was a tremendous mistake, was that he wasn't going to have as a witness anybody who had ever been convicted of a crime. This eliminated many witnesses. Because who is going to be involved? As Garrison himself said, and I think many people have quoted this, bank presidents don't get involved in these plots. The president of the Chamber of Commerce doesn't get involved in plots like this. Who is it going to be if not this demi-monde, this underworld of people?